Wurundjeri Fire. Welcome to Wurundjeri country, the land of my ancestors, where we are gathered here today to undertake a cultural burn, which has been missing out of this landscape since we think about 1850. Hence the reason we have so much sick country and why we have so many intense bushfires, or why the intensity of bushfires has been increasing over the decades. It's because of that lack of continuous land management that my ancestors did.
This is one of 4 sites around Christmas Hills.
My name's Doug Evans. I'm the chair of the Christmas Hills Landcare Group. We're involved in this project because we're very keen to help the Wurundjeri regain their traditional burning practices, and at the same time we think those practices are going to help us better manage the bush on our properties.
So we're just approximating.
The knowledge was lost. We thought that every little mob has a little bit of information, little stories about what they can slightly remember of burning. And we're putting all that information together. Soaking wet, but for me that's a good indication, because we're going to
The sad part what got me started on my journey was the 2009 bushfires. They were devastating in the extreme. No one in the living memory of settlement can remember such devastating fires. No one, even the scientists, could not imagine that fire could get to the temperatures and the intensity that it got to, which led to a bushfire inquiry. And it was on that bushfire inquiry that one of the people on that panel turned around and said, why don't we ask the blackfellas how they did it? Because since settlement, the fires have just been getting steadily and steadily worse. And they wanted to know from us how we managed it and survived. And survived all those bushfires that do happen. We can't stop bushfires, and we never could stop bushfires, and it was never our intention to be firefighters. We learnt to be fire managers. And as I was starting to learn off the other elders, some of the things they were explaining to me, I knew instinctively. And that goes back to our cultural law of always knowing who our ancestors were, what they did, and understanding that this knowledge was not something I had to go and learn out of a book. This was knowledge that I just needed to trigger from a person who knew to trigger my, I don't know, it's like a genetic code that's in Aboriginal people, that it doesn't actually take long to relearn this practice again. When you choose an area to burn, you're first up not looking at the ground. You're looking up above at the trees, and you're looking at what type of trees they are. And now those trees form an ecosystem. And at certain times of the year, that ecosystem needs to be burnt. And the trees will tell you when is the rough season for that to burn. But you don't manage the whole lot at one time. They all need to be managed individually as their own individual identities are. Whereas current burning methods, they map out an area on a map and they'll burn that without regard to the ecosystems that actually exist within it. So the idea when we do the burning is not to burn every single grass in the area. In an ideal world, you want 50% of your grasses unburnt, and you'll get them next year when you burn. And the reason for that is to keep habitat for all the critters that live in the soil, so that they still have cover. So they will know when the fire is coming through, and of course they're going to want to move, and they need to move to a safe spot. So if only every second or third clump of grass burns, that's fine. They've got time to move to another area. Also, after the fire's gone through, they still have protection from predators. What we want to burn is this. Primarily today's exercise is to burn the leaf litter, not so much the grasses. Because when we burn the leaf litter, we then open up the dirt for the grass seed to actually germinate. Currently with all this leaf litter, the grass seed can't germinate. Using the drip torches, people get excited and they end up getting a much bigger fire than what they need, and it ends up trapping a lot of animals, insects, reptiles, all those smaller things. Yeah, kangaroos can get out of the way, but all the smaller stuff, you must pay respects to them as well. So it's just allowing nature to push the fire gently through, giving everything a chance to adjust to it, and that is traditional law, it's traditional culture. Everyone talks about fire needed for seed regeneration. It's not the fire that's important, it's the smoke. It's the chemicals in the smoke that actually causes the regeneration of seeds. And if you've got a really unhealthy smoke that's putting out the wrong chemicals and it's putting out the wrong signals to the seeds, this is the way that's been practiced for thousands and thousands of years, and that is to have this nice white smoke. You can see the people behind us standing there. You know, no one's coughing or wiping their eyes. It's just a gentle burn that everybody can enjoy.
For your property, what are you hoping to achieve out of it?
Well, I feel that there's probably more species here than I'm seeing, and so more diversity within the flora, and with that, hopefully that'll bring in more fauna as well, and yeah, just improve the property.
And it's a good way to keep the grass down, really. It's a good way to manage the bush as well as sort of help them recover. So we're in the 2009 bushfires, our place, so the recovery is a bit different to here. But you're learning. I do little patches every year and learn from them.
Well, it seems to be what's needed for this sort of landscape, certainly as a tool to restore the environment back to a state of health. And I think there's a lot of knowledge that has been lost and hopefully can be regained through engaging with the traditional owners.
All this information, we want to try and retain it. With climate change and with things changing, I think the Indigenous way of thinking, it's very adaptable, it's very connected with nature and what's going on and what they're seeing, and I think that we need to think about how we manage land better and use the wisdom of our Indigenous people.
For you people especially, I pay my respects to your elders past and present.
To date we've done 5 burns on 3 different properties. We've tried to run all of those as community events because we believe that's how the Wurundjeri would have conducted their burns, as typically family and community events.
The burn has gone absolutely really good, but there is one other test that we do that tells if it's a truly successful burn, and that is to test the temperature of the soil after the fire's gone through. Now this fire, you can see it's still just smoking a little bit, but the way I've been taught to do it is actually put your hand in the ashes. And actually that's really good. That soil is still cold, and that's what you want. If you put too much heat into the soil, you actually upset everything that's living in that soil and just underneath it, and that can have an adverse effect on what you're trying to achieve. And the more that I apply the fire, the more I see the results of the fire, and I see the health of the country being restored. And the first indicator, of course, is you see more bird life.
So we decided that we'd set up the demonstrations or the trials in a manner that we could actually monitor what is changing as a result of the burning. So we're applying the traditional practice, but we want to see if the theory did translate into reality. So that's why we've got the monitoring in the way we have, hoping that it'll show more grasses, more insects, better canopy, etc. So what we're trying to achieve here is trying to find out how vegetation cover changes after the burns and following burns. So the expectation is we're starting from a base where there's a lot of leaf litter, a fair bit of bare ground, not a lot of vegetation cover. And over time we would hope to see that shift away from the leaf litter and bare ground and see more vegetation cover, particularly the grasses. Once we'd sort of got down the path of wanting to do these burns, we came to the conclusion we would like to be able to protect the post-burn regeneration, which is going to take a while and it's going to be patchy and therefore relatively small areas of fresh green grass and the like. We wanted to try and keep some of the big grazing pressure or the heavy grazing pressure off it. So we came up with the idea of putting up an electric fence that is relatively temporary. It might be here for 2 to 3 years, but is a design that we can pull down, pack it away, use it somewhere else if we need to. One of the things we're hoping the traditional burning will result in is an increase in insects, both in diversity and number. And what we have here is sampling for insects on the ground. Each of our burn sites has 10 pitfall traps. We leave that open for a week, and then we come back a week later and we see what have we caught. Well, apart from the little animals like the insects and stuff, we also want to get a sense of some of the bigger animals. We used 2 motion sensing cameras to, one, look at what might be using this log on the ground. So the smaller animals and birds will tend to use this as a bit of a highway. Then we'll set up a second camera on a tree which has a wider view, and that's more for the big stuff like whether there's deer or kangaroos or wombats and so on.
And that only adds to the science of how beneficial this can be to the bush. But the biggest benefit is to our own communities. That our communities are now have the opportunity to do a job that is worthwhile to them. Even though it's a moral responsibility under cultural law to keep the bush clean, unfortunately we can't live cultural ways anymore. I'm not going to be running around, in a couple of years in a possum skin cloak, just like my ancestors did. But there is knowledge that we have, that we want to share, that we want people to have their faith and trust in us to do the job that needs to be done.